The best of 7 turned into a best of 5. The best of 5 is now a best of 3. Last minute updates continue to fly from KeyBank Center, with arguably the biggest game in the playoff season to date on the horizon Thursday night. And with history on its side, the Sabres will need to clinch Game 5 to have the best chance at a trip to Raleigh. And with how tight things have been between Buffalo and Montreal, every edge counts. Hello and welcome, I'm Ryan Lee, and welcome to Sabres Digest. All things Buffalo Sabres will be here on Sabres Digest, latest news, updates, reactions, and more. So hit subscribe down below to stay along for the journey, and thank you so much for watching. Like I said, this last couple days, I've been on the road. I am in front of KeyBank Center for today's shoot, so I'm going to keep this brief, I'm going to keep it short, keep it simple, get the news up and out, so that way I can get my buns inside because it is 41 degrees and I have been freezing. But we do this for the content and also for the love of the game, so let's just do it. So the entire Buffalo Sabres roster really had to step up in Game 4 in order to close things out to get the series tied again going into today. Because if you take this Game 5 and you have a 3-1 deficit, it's absolutely detrimental going forward in terms of not just the implications, but also what could happen going forward. And just like this team mentioned, the expectations are to win the Stanley Cup. We made the argument that they're playing with house money because of how the season started off and where the expectations lie. But when you look at kind of the growing sentiment between the fans and the players, it seems very clear that it's really now or never because they want to take this opportunity. If they're contenders, they might as well start from the rip. And they have proven every single time that they are up to the task. They saw it in Game 4. They had that barrage of opportunities in the third period where it was a lot of power plays for Montreal, a lot of offensive zone time where the Sabres were defending, and they stepped up to the task. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was a large part of that. But these losses on both ends of the spectrum have not just been beneficial to the Sabres in terms of retying the series, but also it's something that Montreal have actually really excelled at. I continuously see the stat online how Montreal, they just ping pong back and forth between wins and losses, wins and losses. After 2 games, they're 1-1 in that record. After 4 games, they were 2-2, so on and so forth, where they could potentially be, by the end of this series, 7-7, 14 games deep. But if that's the case, then that means the Sabres win in 7 because they beat Tampa Bay in 7. Montreal lost in Game 1, and you have that trend going back and forth, hypothetically, if that stat holds up. But Montreal have been a team that have been really solid at rebounding from losses, and those losses have not been really taken lightly by the Montreal Canadiens. They've doubled up in terms of the number of goals they've scored on opponents. They're undefeated after a loss. But one thing to take away from Montreal after the games following a loss is the fact that the power play is over and Jakub Dobeš has kind of been asked to stand on his head, considering that the opponents, both Tampa and Buffalo, have severely outshot Montreal when it comes to these games following losses. And one of those games was actually that 9-shot outing in Game 7 against Tampa Bay, where Vasilevsky just didn't have the best of days and Dobeš was lights out. It's going to be really hard to ask a guy like Jakub Dobeš to be absolutely unstoppable, absolutely lights out, game in and game out, but it could easily be something that Montreal could be asked to do or rely upon going into today's game. One thing that the Sabres were able to do really well is get a lot of chaos in front of Dobeš. You have that opening goal from Mattias Samuelsson because you had that screen in front of the net from Josh Norris. You had that second goal that was called off by Jack Quinn because there was just so much going on in front, Konsta Helenius driving the net. Same goes in the final goal, the final nail in the coffin that Zach Benson had. In tight, back and forth, in the crease, causing all sorts of issues for Jakub Dobeš. It's very clear that a lot of the formula that the Sabres are going to have to do in this game, and pretty much every other game going forward, is create some of that chaos. And for Game 5, historically, when things are tied at 2-2, the home team does have a slight advantage, all things considered, but the key thing is to actually win Game 5 when you have a tie series. Nearly 80% of the teams that have won Game 5 in a tie 2 series have moved on to the third round. 81% of the time, the home winners do move on. And more times than not, that series doesn't just end. It ends sooner than later. It's not just you win Game 5 and you survive to Game 7. Historically, you win Game 5 and they ride it into Game 6. And I'm sure the last image that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is going to want from home isn't going to be that bad performance in Boston. He had that excellent game in Montreal, And the last time he started in KeyBank Center, it was that ugly 4-goal outing where he got yanked in the third period. I don't think that's what he wants his lasting memory to be in KeyBank Center when it's a home playoff performance. I expect he's going to potentially step up, and he might even have more help coming considering some of the latest line changes made by Lindy Ruff prior to today's game. A lot of things are kind of business as usual. McLeod with Greenway and Malenstein, Helenius in between Zucker and Quinn, and how good were Helenius and Zucker together? They were exceptional creating off of the rush, especially with Helenius having those 2 chances missed between the save by Dobash and the chance off the pipe. But the thing that I want to really key in on is what that third line is going to be. It very clearly seems like it's going to be Logan Stanley in the mix. But the question is whether or not that's going to be Schenn or that's going to be Metsä. And I think if it's Metsä, that could add a really interesting wrinkle into the defensive core. But if it is Logan Stanley and Schenn, that is where my concerns probably start. They're not giving a chance to a guy like Michael Kesselring. Connor Timmins is not anywhere to be seen in practice, and you're also going to try to force feed one of the right-handed shots into this defensive unit. And Logan Stanley being the pick honestly concerns me because he's had really poor outings throughout the playoffs. But that's where it seems like things are going to go. It's very clear that Montreal's plan a lot of times has been to try to feed pucks into the low slot and get the chances in tight. If Logan Stanley wants to make his presence felt, that he is a valuable asset to this team, he needs to be able to use that big frame, use a little bit of that nastiness, and clear it out as quickly as possible. Because if not, it's going to be a very long day for Buffalo. And I'm sure for everyone that's going to be walking through these gates in a couple hours from now, that's the last thing they want to do. And as per usual, it's not just me saying it, it's not just the X's and O's, but also you have to take a look at what's been happening around just the numbers and the probability of it all. This game has been probably as key to any. It's one thing to take a lead in a best of 7. It's one thing to take the opening game in a best of 5. But when you have a best of 3, this is probably as close to a nail in the coffin as you can have without going to a game 7. Because then it puts all the pressure on Montreal. A really angsty Centre Bell a couple of days from now on Saturday could absolutely turn up the tension in so many ways for Buffalo. They can take the driver's seat, they can take command, and it's all based on their own efforts and abilities. They just have to take a stranglehold on this game. Use the home environment to their disposal because they just haven't been a great home team. But if they can reverse those fortunes, at least for today, then they'll have a chance to take that control in the game and in the series going forward. That'll do it for all of us here at Sabres Digest. Thank you so much for watching. For all things Buffalo Sabres, your latest news, updates, reactions, and more, hit subscribe down below and also comment all your thoughts along the way. I'm going to be inside KeyBank Center later tonight. So happy to be in Western New York for this. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, go Sabres.